Okay, for our next speaker, I'd like to introduce Caroline Chappelle. Caroline is, like Chantelle and Matthew, one of the senior lecturers in the Department of Law here in the faculty. So I'll let Caroline introduce herself and the content of her topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, this morning I'm going to talk about a little-known disorder called body integrity identity disorder. That's how I'm going to term it. Other terms have been used in the past, as we'll look at, but this seems to be the most commonly accepted terminology for it at the moment. I've got a little quote from the Bible here. Now, I'm aware from Rosie that this actually, biblically speaking, is metaphorical. I'm using it as an analogy. And if thy right hand offend thee, cut it off, and cast it from thee, for it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell. And what people who suffer, or seem to suffer from this disorder, consider is that one part of their body, generally a limb, and usually a lower limb, a leg, is not part of themselves, and that causes them enormous mental anguish, which they would describe as a hell. And it would seem within the BIID community that the most effective treatment for this disorder is elective amputation of what is a healthy limb. And a lot of people have a reaction to that of, yuck, that's horrible, that's bizarre. Well, it is to the majority, but to people who suffer from this disorder, it entirely wrecks their lives. And currently, it is not permissible to do elective amputation at any hospital within England and Wales. So I just want to explore this. It is a very new disorder, and there is very limited research about it. Definitions. Now, it used to be called body dysmorphic disorder. Now, what that is when you are very unhappy, you feel that part of you is very ugly, and you want that ugliness removed. And so that's essentially what body dysmorphic disorder is, and it's a recognised mental disorder, which BIID is not in the same way at the moment. The reason that body integrity identity disorder differs is that sufferers don't consider that their offending limb or body part is defective, as people with body dysmorphic disorder do. They see the body part in question as other, literally not part of themselves. They've got no problem with what the leg or the arm looks like. They just know it's not part of themselves, and they feel they need it removed in order to feel whole. They feel over-complete. Now, it sounds bizarre. Now, it is not at the moment included in the key manual for mental disorders, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, which is an American publication used a lot over here by psychiatrists and psychologists as well. One of the reasons it's not included is it has been very misunderstood, and the last DSM was published in 1994. Now, the DSM takes a while to catch up with things. Some of the earliest versions considered homosexuality to be a mental disorder. Now, that's now obviously gone from the DSM, but it's very out of date. There was a text revision in 2000, but that gave more research and more data on conditions already in the DSM rather than adding new ones. It does appear that when DSM-5 comes out, which is likely to be May 2013, BIID will be recognised as a proper, formally recognised mental disorder. So what causes it? And one of the reasons it's taken so long to be recognised is that for a long while it was considered to be a paraphilia, to be an apotemnophilia, which is amputation love. And there is a huge body on the internet, if you go out looking, of people whose sexual preference and fetish is about amputees. I know it sounds odd, but there is a large community out there. And people who wanted their legs removing, for example, to produce a stump, which was regarded as quite a phallic thing, were considered to be suffering from this form of paraphilia, and therefore were not treated in any way seriously. There is some suggestion that there is an element of this paraphilia associated with some people who present with BIID, but it is not the majority. So what causes this? There's elements of paraphilia in a minority. Some people suggest that it's a childhood experience that causes people to feel like this. If they came from a very cold home where they got no affection, and say there was an amputee down the road who did get a lot of love and affection because of the disability, people postulate that that might be one of the reasons why people, as they grow older, want to be an amputee, to discover the love and affection that they lacked in childhood. However, the most currently accepted explanation, this is why it's gaining such current ground as more and more research is done, is that what we're actually looking at here is a neurobiological examination, a brain disorder. Now, your parietal cortex has a map, a body map, of which parts of your body belong to you. And that little odd diagram there, that shows how much of the brain is devoted to which bit. Bits that have lots of nerve endings, lots of muscles, have bigger parts of the brain devoted to them. So if you look at the slide there, the thumb is massive, absolutely massive. And the mouth is huge too, because we have lots of sensory nerve endings in our thumb and in our mouth. The leg at the top of that odd little diagram is comparatively small. This brain disorder is now becoming more and more widely accepted as a reason behind people with full-blown proper BIID. There's a range, there's a spectrum, as there is with anything. There may be people presenting saying, I want my leg removed, who are suffering from a paraphilia. There may be some people it relates to a childhood experience and might be able to deal with therapy. But this neurobiological explanation is gaining ground. Studies have been done at the University of California, and they show that people who allege that they're suffering from BIID, when they stimulate the leg in question and then they look at the brain under an MRI scan, the brain doesn't seem to be registering what's happening with that leg at all. That there's literally part of the brain's wiring that isn't wired up properly. So they literally feel this leg isn't theirs. And this can lead them, as we'll see later in this talk, to very extreme action at times. Now, it's a sort of subject which causes a lot of amusement and a lot of sensationalism. One of the episodes of Grey's Anatomy that you might see on Sky, that involved a patient allegedly suffering from BIID asking if he could have his leg removed. They said no, and he went and cut it off with a chainsaw. It can be a very, very sensationalist. The problem is that if amputations do appear to be of enormous therapeutic benefit to these people. This is just two quotes here. One from a study, one of the only studies that's been published so far by First in 2005. The only regret is that I did not have it earlier. Since I had it done 5 years ago, I felt the best I've ever felt. It finally put me at peace. I no longer have that constant gnawing frustration. This is a chap called Vickers, the second quote. Now, he self-amputated his leg, as a lot of, not a lot, but there's not that many people suffering from BIID. But if you are going to self-amputate, the mode of choice, and you can look on YouTube for a video of how to do it, showing somebody actually doing it, is stick your legs in dry ice. You have to do it very carefully, because if you don't do it properly, you end up with a very, very severely injured leg. And he had a couple of goes, and finally he managed to succeed in killing his leg effectively with dry ice. Once that leg has effectively got substantial frostbite and has died, proper medics, proper doctors, mainstream doctors have no other option but to amputate that limb, so they get what they want. And he said, the next I awoke from surgery relieved and elated to see that my left leg had been reduced to a newly bandaged above-knee stump. Nothing short of sheer unbridled ecstasy would describe my joy. At last to be able to live my life as I wanted to live it since childhood, to have replaced a life-threatening handicap with a disability which to me would be as nothing, a challenge even. No longer handicapped, as he regarded himself to be with his extra leg, I was now whole as in my dreams, and I had a life to get on with and a family to love and care for. And he's married and he's got children. And with BIID sufferers, they often don't have a lot of other psychological problems. It's purely focused on this limb that they feel is extraneous to them. Now, there are various treatments that people postulate could be given for this particular disorder. Now, one is obviously medication in some form, antidepressants, something like that. Another suggested treatment is therapy. In first study, of the around 60 BIID sufferers he spoke to, about 20 had had psychotherapy, which had had absolutely no effect on their desire to get rid of their limb. Other sufferers say that therapy can reduce the desire, but it can't take it away. Amputation is the most preferred option and seen by the BIID community as the most effective. If you want more information on this, that's the website of the main organisation for people who claim to be suffering from this condition. And I'm just going to show you here, because it's all very well talking about amputations in the abstract. I'm just going to show you a 2-minute clip from YouTube. Now, what this is, back in 1997, there's a surgeon called Robert Smith, and he was at Falkirk Infirmary up in Scotland. And in 1997 and then again in 2000, he performed elective amputations on 2 sufferers of BIID. Now, sufferers of BIID feel this about their limb from early childhood. Both of the subjects that he took the legs off had felt that this limb didn't belong to them from very early childhood. We're talking 5, 6, and the feeling often increases as one gets older. And the problem was, after 2000, there was a huge media furore. People found out who'd been doing this. Jackie Thornton writing in the Sunday Telegraph, the Independent, the BBC got on the case, and the hospital removed any ethical permissions for any further surgeries. This chap is the second guy in 2000 that Robert Smith operated on, German chap. So I'm going to see if this works.
Hands did not want
No,
to
hang on. Can you help me here?
I felt like at the age of 14, I'm in the wrong body, and I should have a leg amputated.
We'll just put it back to the beginning.
Okay.
Hands did not want to be identified.
I felt like at the age of 14, I'm in the wrong body, and I should have a leg amputated.
I consulted psychologists and psychiatrists, and eventually I came to the point where I said, well, this has to be done.
I felt like, if the leg was removed, I feel like being more complete and being just the way I like to be. I'm happy with it, quite happy with it.
The surgery seems to have been effective. Amputation has freed hands of his obsession. The success of these operations has led many more sufferers to demand the same surgical treatment.
Clearly, there are many members of the medical profession who are totally opposed to the concept of an amputation for these people. Are you happy having only one leg?
Yeah.
You enjoy
I do
a one-legged man?
Yes, I enjoy being one-legged. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. I'm happy with it. Quite happy with it.
Is there any aspect of your life that has deteriorated as a result of us having taken your leg up?
Today, if you ask me today, would you have it done? I would not hesitate saying yes, without any restorations or anything. It improved my life quite a bit because that's the way I wanted to be, and that's the way it is, and I'm quite happy about that.
You got no temper spots on it?
No.
Not even down there.
No.
That's fine. And you can get it right straight. You can bend it right up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good range of movement. Yeah.
No, full range of movement.
Yeah. That's excellent.
Yeah, I can move in the back.
Yeah.
There's no problem with that. Then.
Right, can you give me some help here, guys? Just press escape. Sorry, we did. Okay. Yeah, move beyond there. Those treatments. That's it. Stay there. Right, thanks. Right, now, you just saw there one of the people whose legs was amputated up in Scotland in Falkirk in 2000. You can see he's really happy about it. Now, Vickers, the quote was from that chap earlier in the slide, he had his amputation 21 years ago and he's absolutely happy with it. It transformed his life. This guy had it obviously about 10 years ago and thinks it was the best thing ever. And the surgeon found it very satisfying surgery, because these people really are trapped in a body that they do not think is their own. This leads them to take extreme measures. In Smith reports instances of people shooting their legs off with a shotgun, chainsaw, wood chipper. There was one chap who went for a back street sort of operation in a third world country. He died of gangrene because they didn't have the facilities in order to treat him properly. So we're then going to look at the ethics. If there is this condition affecting a small minority of people, then let's look at the ethics of whether elective amputation should be allowed. Now, one of the problems and one of the reasons people feel intuitively it's wrong is that you are taking somebody who is physically whole and surgically disabling them. So although the sufferer himself might feel enabled, in practice he or she is physically disabled as a result of the treatment. The Hippocratic Oath says first do no harm. Medical principalism with Beauchamp and Childress also has a principle of non-malfeasance, do no harm. If you're cutting off a healthy leg, that could be seen as maiming somebody, substantial harm. One of the issues that people raise is that these people might change their minds after the operation. There is very little research on it, there's very few people with this, and a lot of it is very underground. But from what I can understand, there isn't one person who's had an amputation for BIID who's regretted it in any way. Now, if they did regret it in any way, there would be possible legal implications if the consent hadn't been taken properly. There could be potential actions in tort for battery and for negligence if the consent wasn't properly taken, and then the person afterwards said, well, I wasn't properly consented, and had I been, I wouldn't have had that operation. There is also the possibility of a criminal charge of grievous bodily harm. Johnson and Elliott, 2002, in clinical medicine, suggested that the surgeon in Falkirk, Robert Smith, had committed a technical crime of intent to wound. Consent's not a defence to GBH, and what's happening in amputation certainly meets the technical conditions of Section 18 of the Offences Against the Person Act. In order not to be prosecuted, you'd have to have a sort of defence of proper medical treatment supported in R and Brown from 1994. Now, Smith was not prosecuted for this, and if this order is recognised more and more and included in the DSM, and operations are allowable, then presumably there would not be a danger of a conviction for GBH. Now, amputation, it is said, also compromises bodily integrity. If you've got a whole nice body, and you want a leg lopped off, that's clearly compromising in some way bodily integrity. From a religious perspective, certainly from a Christian religious perspective, a lot of religious thinking is totally anti the idea of amputation treatment for this. The Catholic bioethics website rejects elective mutilation and states very clearly that no Catholic surgeon should be carrying it out. Your body is given to you by God, it's a temple, and you should not be altering it in an unnatural way. Arguments for amputation as a treatment for BIID. Well, we saw on the previous slide, first do no harm. If you're looking at a situation where someone is trapped in a body and they generally do not recognise that leg as their own, it causes them depression, problems with work, some have attempted suicide. Also, as I've mentioned, some of them attempt self-amputation. Now, in the video that we saw, the guy's stump we had a look at, if you electively take someone's leg off, you can put a nice pad of fat and tissue on the end, which means it takes a prosthesis better. There's much less problems of complications from the amputation itself. So you can say that this would prevent home or backstreet amputations and so prevent unnecessary harm to the sufferer, which can, as I've mentioned, has in one case led to death. Others say, well, it gives effect to the sufferer's autonomy. If we have the right to do what we want to with our bodies, then why should we not be allowed to take a limb off if our brain genuinely doesn't recognise it as our own? And others make an analogy to gender reassignment surgery. Now, that is recognised in the DSM, that particular disorder, and you can get treatment on the NHS for it. That is one argument that I haven't mentioned against amputation, which is obviously you're disabling somebody. It's going to take NHS resources to do that, and then they might well be reliant on benefits afterwards. Even if it's a private operation, they're still disabled, they still may be able to claim benefits afterwards. So that is an issue. What the BIID community would say is that amputation is the most effective manner in which to cure their mental anguish. They say, in relation to gender reassignment surgery, that if you're a man and you want to become a woman and you have surgery for that, that only takes you so far. You're still trapped to a large extent in a masculine body, whereas in their case, they achieve it absolutely what they want to be, their absolute ideal body idea in their minds, because they are now complete and whole, and the mental anguish has ended. So I'm just going to end with this. It's just a thought, really, because this is such a not unknown, but misunderstood condition. It looks like it will soon be formally recognised, and if it is formally recognised, we have to have some form of response to it. I personally feel that if you have someone that you can absolutely show has BIID as a result of a brain disorder, then in certain circumstances, if consented with proper psychological and psychiatric backup, as the Falkirk cases were, then it might be permissible in certain circumstances for elective amputations to be offered at hospitals within this country. Thanks for listening. Have you got any questions? I knew you would, Wendy.
You said that you can get the operation done in England or Scotland.
Or Wales,
so
yeah.
Is there still a place where you could go
No.
in and done it?
No, there's not. There's rumours on the internet of somewhere in Asia who will do it for you, but no one's been able to pin down who it is.
And another one, just as I got hold of her, they showed him going to the doctors
Yes.
with a fake leg. So he
Yes.
went to the doctors, he chopped his leg off.
And then he's got a
then
prosthesis.
He used the fake one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What BID sufferers would say to that is that their body map is of them with an above-knee amputation.
right.
And some of them are quoted on the BID site saying, yes, people ask, why do I have my leg off if I then use a prosthesis? And they're saying, when it's me, when I'm on my bed at night, when I'm on my own, I feel whole. I'm there as an amputee, which is what I want to be. And the prosthesis just helps them get through life. Their body map is essentially conforming to how they're feeling mentally, and they feel a lot happier. Yes.
I'm thinking ahead to dissertation, and I haven't studied medical ethics, but I would like to go down that route. I'm sort of interested in sort of the criminal side of it, you know, like you're saying,
Yes.
it could be made and then cases like that.
Yes.
I was just wondering, do you work at the uni if I could contact you?
Yes, you certainly can.
Yeah.
I teach medical law here.
Okay.
So, yes, certainly you can.
So
So,
I'm not here, I'm at Staffordshire Uni, but
I'll give you my email before
that's what ideas and
I
stuff.
go.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask, is it a clinical diagnosis only at the moment? Is there any prospect of being able to identify people offering evidence in that setting?
I think the way they'll go down is the MRI scan route. That if your brain generally isn't recognising. There was a boy who he woke up one morning and he tried to throw his own leg out of bed. He didn't recognise it as his. It was very bizarre. What had happened is he had a bleed into the parietal cortex, probably just where the leg would have been recognised. When the clot was removed, he felt his leg was his own again. So there does seem to be a neurological explanation for this.
Because that might be quite important, mightn't it? Because, I mean, if it does become recognised,
Yeah.
it will attract
Yes.
quite a number of people who may be peripheral.
Very much so. It would need serious psychological and psychiatric evaluation. Probably backed up with an MRI scan. I'm not saying everybody in the spectrum should have surgery, by no means.
Because it's so once and for all.
It is. That's the whole thing about it. You can't stick it back on. Yes.
Isn't there any kind of research into looking at why aren't they looking at this part of the brain to see
Well, they
why
are.
it's not functioning rather than chopping the leg off?
Well, they are, but it's so very, very early stages. They literally think that part of the brain hasn't developed. but that part of the brain does not recognise that leg. Now, how do you get that brain to recognise that leg if there's no connections there in the first place? It's early in the research. More research is about to be published on it prior to the DSM-5, which I haven't seen yet. Yeah.
You suggested that someone might be able to get treatment if they had a brain scan and it was shown that their brain anomaly was the reason why they had it.
Yeah.
But we don't require brain scans to treat people for transgenderism or gender dysphoria, so why would we require them for this?
Well, I think that's because this is so new and because it is much less accepted than gender reassignment surgery. And if you were starting off, because at the moment there's a blanket ban, if you were starting off, it may be well be the case that a scan might not be required in the future. But I think to get the government or to get the ethics committees to actually allow an operation to take place, they would need substantial information in order to say yes, go ahead with the amputation, because the PR implications for the hospital concerned are massive. I mean, in 2005, there was a lady who tried to freeze her legs with dry ice and go to Falkirk to get Robert Smith to amputate. She didn't do it well enough. It's a very scientific process. The guy who succeeded had a chemical background. And she was basically patched up and sent on her way. She's now in continual agony, and apparently part of her legs, there's hardly any flesh there at all. But this is the problem. So to get it through an ethics committee, I think initially, I think you would need such a substantial amount of medical evidence for them to get to accept that. Yes.
I'm reminded of a scene from Spamalot.
Yes. Yes, I know the one you're talking about.
Yes, of course, I think we all do. I suppose that if this surgery becomes approved, then the question is, where would it stop?
Exactly.
You just mentioned a woman who tried to amputate both of her legs.
Yeah.
It's inconceivable to me that there would ever be approval for quadruple amputation of that. Where do you draw the line?
I quite agree. Now, with most BIID sufferers, once their legs are amputated, that's it. They do not have, cosmetic surgery. Some people get their nose done and then want their boobs done and then want their bottom done, and it can escalate into a real mental disorder and a problem. That doesn't seem to be the case in that small number of people we know about who had elective amputations. They seem to stop there. Now, there are some double amputees as well as single amputees, and the one in the University of California study, they found that both legs did not register properly in the mind on the MRI scan. They looked at 4 of them, 3 of them, one leg, one double amputee. So it might be that they would say yes to double amputee. Possible, theoretically.
We'll just take this as the final question. It was just about policy decisions, really, that think about the new welfare rights bill that's coming in. If they're going to limit benefits for people who are currently disabled, do you think policy-wise they're going to actually go along, and will this influence decisions as to whether it is entered into DSM-5?
I won't alter the decision as to whether it's entered into the DSM, because that's an American decision. One of the guys who's done the leading research on this first is actually editing the DSM-5, so I think it will come in there. Then if it's recognised in there, where does that take us from there? When will it be recognised? I don't know the answer to that question. It's a wait and see. 3 years' time, you might all be reading about it.